started out, the shocks were adjusted at 2 turns, and there's about 9 or 10 full turns of adjustment on both bump and rebound. So we started about 2 full turns soft on both bump and rebound on all 4 corners. So front and rear, left and right, all 2 turns from full soft. So we had a lot of adjustment to go stiffer. So Bill?
So what we did is just decided to go full closed on the valves, so as firm as we could get on compression or bump. And we did that on all 4 shocks. We just kind of wanted to see what it would do, and that was our starting point. Very interesting. I felt it as soon as I got in it and started to drive to the Gatekeeper, and I thought, yeah, that's psychological, really can't tell. But you know, you're hoping for the best. You know
Exactly.
how that goes. It's all in your brain. But when we got up here,
Turns out it was all on your butt.
yeah, it was in my butt. I could feel it in the seat of my pants. And if you've driven long enough and you know your vehicle well enough, you're going to notice differences like that. So when we hit the first wall of the Gatekeeper, which you can't see in the camera here, but it's pretty abrupt, the first thing we noticed is as we're coming up with less rebound, we're not unweighting the tires as much, and the tires are staying on the rocks, and we had better traction crawling up the rocks, which was something I didn't even anticipate. And then once we got all the way up, turned around and came back down, that's where we're dropping off the leading edges of these rocks and coming down. I was amazed. It was just soft. It wasn't a bounce with a rebound, and we hadn't touched rebound. We left those at 2 in from full soft.
Correct.
And it seemed to work. The biggest thing was it was soft going this way on compression, which really made it to where we weren't tipping or rocking, swaying back and forth, and it felt a lot more controllable all the way down. And I think what was my first comment when I got all the way down, I said, I want some.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said.
And I said, could you see a difference? And you said, in the camera, I could see a difference.
And we'll show some side by side so you can get an idea. But one of the things that really stood out to me is the way the shocks were set before. When we go over bumps, we get more than one oscillation on the shocks. So the body would bounce back and forth a little bit before it's stabilized. Now it's pretty much just that single oscillation, which it has to be. If you didn't have that, you'd have no shock absorbers or suspension. So we're just getting that one oscillation, which means the springs are being dampened correctly, and also it's still allowing the axle to articulate. You probably can't see it here, but just on these rocks where it's full stuff on the driver front tire, it really makes a big difference. But we didn't just stop there. After we got that working and thought, wow, this is really pretty cool and really nice in these big rocks on the Gatekeeper here, we drove up the trail a little ways, and if you've been on Gold Mountain, you know between here and the first obstacles on the trail, there's a lot of bumps and ruts and rocks, so it's pretty rough and you bounce around quite a bit. Immediately noticed much smoother ride. You were getting that pitching or that rocking back and forth.
Yeah, the swaying back and forth.
And I was able to cruise at probably 5 miles an hour faster than I would normally drive on the trail. So I was going up at 15 miles an hour in most places, pretty comfortable. A few places where it's really radical, some erosion where you got to slow down. And then Bill drove down, and what were your impressions of driving it?
Well, the first thing I noticed is I didn't get the sway. Yours was always better than mine anyway, just due to the dampening with these, the way they were set. But with the compression set full tilt, we didn't get the sway. So the other thing we looked at was hitting bumps intentionally to drive one tire or the other up, thinking, okay, well that's really going to rock the vehicle this way. And it didn't. It was still enough to where it would absorb the bump and not rock and sway. That's about the only thing. And we also thought we were going to hit that going slowly through the rocks. Whereas if the compression was so stiff, as we hit something with the left front, is it going to push the whole vehicle like this? And it didn't. It just, the axle reacted like it's supposed to, but we had better traction.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't rock the vehicle because of the stiffness of the compression on the shocks.
And there was one point going up the Gatekeeper here where the rear tires, especially the driver's side rear tire, was in a hole. And there's some loose dirt, loose rocks, and we didn't use lockers at all. But the first time we drove with the original softer setup, we got some wheel spin, and then the tires would grab and pull us up. The second time after the adjustment, just one adjustment on all four corners, going to full stiff on compression, on bump, the traction improved significantly in that one spot, which is the only spot we had any traction issues at all. It wasn't a big deal, but there was a noticeable improvement.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think of there is as the tire's spinning on the rock slowly, just getting its traction, once it did, the shock didn't let the axle or the tire drive the axle up into the vehicle. It gave us more traction. The weight stayed on that tire, which gave us better traction, and up we went.
Yeah, and having that stiffer compression in the rear was holding the weight on the tire longer before it transferred, which is putting more weight on the tire, you've got more traction.
Yeah.
So it did make a difference.
It did. I was surprised. It made more of a difference than I thought in areas that I didn't even think about.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Wish they made it for the JK.
Oh, they will eventually.
Yeah. Come on, Bilstein.
Yeah, one of the things that was really important, I loved these shocks before we even messed with them. Just the way we put them on when we installed the Rock Jock suspension with John Curry at Rock Jock. And we talked about how to set the shocks, and I said, well, let's start on the soft side. And I love the shocks. You know, we could, especially out in the desert and whoop-de-doos, great stability, really comfortable ride. But we're rock crawlers, so we really wanted to test what the shock tuning would do crawling in the rocks. And frankly, I'm really surprised at the difference it's made.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to touch it. Now, if we were set up for desert and doing whoop-de-doos, we'd probably want to work on rebound on at least the rears.
Yeah, for sure.
The front, we want the front doing its thing. The rear, we don't want it coming up in the back. So I would probably mess with it if that's what we were going to do. But how many Jeeps do that? Jeeps are really set up for slow crawling and rock crawling. And if somebody would have told me shocks will make a difference in half or quarter mile per hour rock crawling, I don't think I would have believed it. But it did.
Yeah.
It's a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
Same day, same temperature, same tires, same drivers. You did it once, I did it once, a couple of times actually.
Yeah.
And noticed a difference every time. So I'm impressed.
Awesome.
Well, I'd say that was a really good day. We learned a lot. And again, really impressed. I was impressed with the shocks to begin with on our first iteration. What was that, a few months ago when we first put them on?
Yeah.
But big difference. So appreciate you guys watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. And just remember to like, share, and subscribe.